She walked out the door. I knew this would happen. It should have happened a long time ago. I'd been noticing signs of it for months now. She was distant, or annoyed, or ambivalent, or confrontational. No matter what I said or what I did, it wasn't helping the situation. There were very few good times during these months. In fact, the good times came when we went out with friends and it provided a distraction from our miserable lives. My name is Kurt Randolph and she is my wife Sue. Well, she's my wife, at least for a while. I've already talked to an attorney to file divorce papers. 26 years of marriage ends with a whimper, not an explosion. I will be calling my son and daughters to let them know this weekend. I just don't know where we went wrong. 26 years of marriage, all but the last few have been good. Not great, but good. Life hasn't been a solid cherry, but we've lived well. Our children, Glenn, Julia, and Rachel, are healthy, well-settled young adults. Two of them are still in college and one graduated 6 months ago. This may have been the catalyst for our problems. The empty nest syndrome started when our first child left for college. It affected her more than I realized. She changed a lot. From then on, no matter how much I hinted, coaxed, or begged, it never happened. It was a change, and I had to get over it, meaning sex would no longer be a part of our life together. Needless to say, this led to many heated arguments. In the end, I just gave up and took matters into my own hands. Arguing about it was pointless. Why would I want to be intimate with someone who doesn't want me? Then, a few months ago, she started to change, and not for the better. Now she's leaving, and honestly, it's hard for me to feel anything close to sad. I know where she's going, to her lover. She doesn't do it with me, but with some guy 10 years younger than her, she spends hours in bed. When I first noticed this change, I knew something was going on. Sure, it bothered me, but not as much as perhaps it should have. But I had to know, so I asked around. I work 50, 60 hours a week at 3M Corporation in Aberdeen, South Dakota. I'm a manufacturing engineer. It's a great job, except that sometimes I have to go to work at odd hours. Sometimes I'm on call, and if something goes wrong that the maintenance techs can't figure out, I'm the one who has to get the equipment back up and running. In the past, working on call has posed some problems. You couldn't go away for the weekend and miss the kids' Saturday soccer games or even a late dinner. But the pay is good, and Aberdeen, although the third largest city in South Dakota, is small enough to feel like a small town. I prefer it to big city living. We lived in St. Paul, Minnesota for several years. Not much happens in that city without someone knowing about it. If you ask around, someone knows someone who 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 knows something or has seen something. Just a week after my question, my best friend Paul came back to me with a grim expression on his face. "You were right, Kurt," he said. "What did you hear?" "She has lunch with a guy at least once a week. Carol, one of her coworkers, is my cousin. She said it's been going on for at least 3 months. He picks her up from the parking lot and they come back an hour later," Paul revealed. Sue works at Mid-States Printing Company. She's a administrative assistant. I think secretary is a derogatory term now. She's been working there for about 15 years, having returned to work shortly after our youngest went to kindergarten. I have to admit that for a 48-year-old woman, she still looks good and doesn't even look 40. I'm sure that's why she was attractive to David Perkins. That's the same scumbag who tried to slander my wife. He sells paper at the Heartland Paper Mill in Sioux Falls. He makes regular rounds and calls Mid-States. I checked him out when Paul brought me up to speed. David Perkins, divorced, has 2 children, ages 7 and 10. From what I understand, he cheated on his wife. She found out and made him sue. That was 4 years ago. I guess cheaters don't mind forcing others to cheat. I wonder if Sue's his only victim. For her sake, I hope so, but I doubt it. It doesn't matter now. Sue left under some lame excuse, going away alone for a spa weekend to take a break from the tension between us. Alone, what a joke. I know she's going to be with him. And not just for a few hours like 2 weeks ago when she took the weekend off to be with him. Carol called Paul, who called me when he found out Sue was taking the day off. I took the day off too and followed her as she drove out of the parking lot. She made it to the Holiday Inn, and guess who was waiting for her? That's when I called my divorce attorney and started the process. She was supposed to get a subpoena on her resort weekend. All I had to do was call when the GPS tracker of her Yukon XL stopped at its final destination, I know some will say I should have told her what was going on, but after 3 long years of no intimacy, you start to wonder if it was worth it. It's not that your love is dead, it's just that you wonder if it's enough. You start to think that maybe you both would have been happier with someone else or even alone. For her sake, I hope that's the case. I've always been a person who can be happy in almost any situation. Why go through life focusing on the negative? Because there are so many good things around every day. So I sit here with my phone in my hand and follow her progress as she goes about her destiny. Sioux. I'm excited and a little anxious about going to Sioux Falls. I'm spending the next 2 nights with David, my friend and lover. He understands me. He listens without judging or trying to fix me or my problems. He doesn't demand anything from me, and so I take everything I give him as a gift. No pressure, no expectations, no whining or pleading like my husband Kurt would. He just doesn't get it. When a woman begins to go through the changes, she doesn't want or need sex like she did in her 20s. She needs a man who will listen and love her for who she is. David has been that kind of man for me for the past 3 months. We started going out to lunch together and talking. I could talk to him about anything. He listened and made me feel special, like I wasn't just a mom or an administrative assistant. 2 weeks ago, he asked me if I could take the day off to do something fun. I knew what he was asking. For the past month, he'd been hinting at a relationship. He had mentioned in passing that he liked to pamper a woman, to be attentive to her wants and needs. The fact that this guy 10 years younger than me was showing attention and desire made me wonder. I agreed to take Thursday off. I had some free time. He had booked a room at the Holiday Inn. I was nervous, of course, but I figured this was a guy who knew me and cared about me. I wanted to show him that I cared about him too, and thank him in a special way. When I arrived at the hotel, David invited me into the room and we sat in the chairs and talked for a while. He complimented me on my looks. Sue, you always look so good. You dress smart, businesslike. I don't know how your boss manages to get any work done. I blushed and giggled a little. He's so cute, and I'm glad he noticed my attention to his appearance. Then he leaned over to me and kissed me. I thought, when was the last time Kurt kissed me like that? I know it's been years. A few minutes passed and we were already doing it on the bed. I wanted to get home before Kurt did, so I got up, took a quick shower, and got dressed. Do you think we could go away for the weekend? David asked me. David asked me. David asked me. David asked. I could rent a riverside inn near Sioux Falls and we could enjoy the view, nature, and each other. The fall leaves are just reaching their peak. That sounds like a good idea, but I don't know what to tell my husband. Tell him you're going away for a spa weekend. You need to get away to be yourself. Is he really such a horrible person that he's denying you a little vacation? I don't know if he'll even notice, I said, thinking about how our relationship had deteriorated lately. Okay, I'll schedule it for 2 weeks starting this Friday, okay? That sounds great, David. I love spending time with you, I said. And you know I love spending time with you, he replied. I left with the thought that he and I would be back together in a couple weeks. I drove straight home, getting home at the usual time. But Kurt wasn't there, of course. He always works late. I felt a little guilty when I walked in the door. This was the house my husband and I shared. I walked through the living room toward the kitchen and saw a large picture of the whole family hanging over the fireplace. Then I saw our framed wedding photo standing on the mantel. I stopped and looked at both pictures. What have I done? I thought to myself. I know Kurt and I don't get along, but is that a reason to leave him? I can't do anything that would make him suspicious. I'll do the usual. I went into the bedroom and changed into jeans and a t-shirt, putting the clothes in the laundry basket. Then I headed to the kitchen to get started on dinner. I decided to make one of his favorite dishes, stuffed pork chops and mashed potatoes. Kurt? I remember that day vividly. It was the final nail in the coffin of our marriage. She stayed in the hotel room for over 3 hours. I'm not an idiot, I know what they were doing, but it broke my heart. It's been over 3 years since we had intimacy. She didn't even want to kiss me anymore because it always leads to you only wanting one thing. The most I was getting was a quick kiss, and that's not even counting hugs. I drove around the neighborhood after I saw her leave the hotel. I didn't want to drive home. I didn't know what I could do to her in the emotional state I was in. At 8:30, I pulled into our garage, turned off the car, and sat there for a minute or two. She opened the door from the kitchen to the garage as I was getting out of the car. Sir, what were you doing? Didn't you drive up here a couple minutes ago? She asked. Uh, Talking on the phone, I replied. And the lying began. I made dinner, but it's getting cold. You better call if you're going to be staying out late, Iseda said irritably. Sorry, a problem came up that I didn't know how to handle. I'll probably be staying late at work a lot in the near future. It wasn't a lie. I didn't want to be around her. That was 2 weeks ago, and now she was on her way out the door to go on a spa weekend. I had been coming home late at night for the past 2 weeks, and on the weekends I was doing yard work and getting the house ready for winter. We were like roommates, but not for long. As soon as she got to her destination, I would call Tom Andrews, the sheriff. One of the nice things about living in a small town is that you get to know a lot of people. Tom and Marcia were friends. We had been to their house many times and vice versa. I talked to him a couple days ago and asked him if he would be serving divorce papers on my wife. He was shocked until I brought him up to speed. I'm sorry to hear that, Kurt. You and Sue were together for a very long time. Yes, but for the last 3 years we haven't been together physically at all, I said. 3 years? Wow. I think, now that you mention it, the last few times you and I went out, there seemed to be a little tension between you two. Now she's spending time with someone else. Half of me wants to hurt her, and the other half of me just says, there's no point in wasting energy on someone who doesn't love you anymore. Sorry, Kurt, so when do you want her serviced? Saturday, I think. She's leaving for a spa weekend on Friday. By tonight, I'll know where she's staying. I'm going to track her Yukon GPS and see where it stops. Sue. It's over a 3-hour drive from Aberdeen to Sioux Falls, where David has a hotel booked, so I grabbed a fast food snack on the way. I arrived a little after 9 o'clock. David must have been waiting for me because he was out of the house as soon as I pulled into the driveway. The realization that he was watching me made me feel good in my heart. I thought you'd never come. I was afraid Kurt would ban you from the spa weekend. He doesn't own me, and there's no way I'm missing this event. I've been looking forward to it since we talked about it 2 weeks ago. They just opened an ice cream parlor in the dining hall. Let's sit there and then we'll pick up your stuff, David suggested. Sounds great. It was another sign that David, unlike Kurt, wanted something more from me. He didn't offer to head to the room right away. After getting to know the hosts and other guests, we fed each other ice cream with cherries and whipped cream. I could tell that David was itching for a fresh start by how often he touched and caressed me during the meeting. The inn is very nice and the host and other guests seemed very friendly. After we ate ice cream, we took my things to my room. Our room was probably the largest room available, and it overlooked the river. I'm sure tomorrow in the light of day it will be breathtakingly beautiful with all the fall colors on it. Kurt? Sue's GPS stopped working. I checked the address and found that there was a bed and breakfast there. Now I knew where to go. I called Tom. What's up, Kurt? A little numb right now. I'm sure I won't be able to sleep much tonight, probably even more than she did. I said mournfully. Don't beat yourself up about it, Kurt. You're doing something about it. It's best to just forget about it as much as possible and let the process take its course. 26 years, Tom, 26 years. Yeah, that's a bitch. Are you sure you want me to file them? He asked. Are you sure you can't make a deal? Tom, we haven't felt like a couple in years, and this just puts things in perspective. I'm sorry again, Kurt. Thanks. I gave Tom the address of the boarding house. He said he'd serve the divorce papers late tomorrow morning after he drove there. When my lawyer drew up the papers, I indicated that I wanted a divorce on the grounds of adultery. He told me that without proof, we would likely have to go down the road of irreconcilable differences. At least then the court papers will state that I tried to file on the grounds of adultery, I said. I would wait until tomorrow to call the kids. I didn't want any of them to call Mom and alert her. Those calls would be the hardest. Kurt. The night was restless. I only managed to get 2 hours of sleep. I kept thinking about Sue with this man. What went wrong in our marriage? When we were younger, we didn't want to go to work to be together. Reality told us that work was necessary, but our thoughts, at least mine, were always about coming home and being there for her. When the kids came along, our priorities certainly changed, but we were still a team, just an even bigger one. Now she found another man who became her teammate. Our life together is over. She'll be served with a subpoena this morning, and we'll each have our own team, just on different sides of the courtroom. Me with my lawyer, her with hers, fighting for whatever we can get out of the remnants of our life together. I lay back on the bed and stare into space. I hadn't even bothered to undress last night. I should probably get up, take a shower, and change into something presentable that doesn't look like it's been slept in. Sue. I wake up with David. I'm so relaxed it feels like I've slept for days. I look at the clock. It's 7:45. It's time for us to get up. Breakfast buffet is from 7:30 to 9. David, we need to get up. We need to get cleaned up and go downstairs, I tell him. Let's skip breakfast and continue what we started last night, he says. I need a refresher if we're going to do this again. I say, oh, Kurt, I say to myself, what happened to us? I haven't felt intimacy with you in years. It used to be us against the world. I sink into reflection, remembering my life and the wonderful events. My wedding, the birth of my 3 children, vacations, graduation parties, and soon our son's wedding to a girl he'd been dating since junior year of college. The bathroom door opens and I wipe my eyes and fix my makeup while David gets dressed. I can't look at him. I don't want him to see the moisture in my eyes. Are you ready to go out to eat? He asks. Yes, I say quietly. We walk down to the dining room and say hello to our hosts and the other couples. At the buffet, we pick out some wonderful dishes. Everything looks so appetizing that I find it hard to hold back, but my figure tells me to watch what I eat. We sit and eat in silence. David tries to make light conversation, but my comments are restrained. I look around the room. There is an older couple celebrating their 50th anniversary. There is also a young couple who appear to be celebrating their first anniversary. The rest of the couples are of varying ages. I notice that David and I are the only ones not wearing wedding rings. I took mine off when I drove here last night. I quickly finish my food and turn to David. Why don't we take a walk down to the river? I want to take in the views and enjoy the colors. Sure, and then after lunch we'll drive through the countryside and have a late lunch somewhere along the way, he says. As we walk along the riverbank, David takes my hand. It's so beautiful here. I say it out loud, not necessarily to him, but just to nature. Yes, it is, he replies, but not as beautiful as you. I smile, he praises me and my look so often, and has been doing so since he became a sales rep for his company in Aberdeen 6 months ago. He made this 48-year-old woman feel young and attractive again. Let's go back to the room. I want to express my appreciation for this wonderful weekend, I tell him. He looks at me with a huge smile on his face. We get home and get down to business. At that moment, I hear a knock on the door. I grab my robe and open the door a little to peek out. A man in a sheriff's uniform is standing there. I open the door a little wider and ask, "What can I do for you?" Sue Randolph. The voice sounds familiar. It's Tom Andrews. He and his wife Marcia are good friends. I just rarely see him in uniform and cap. Tom, I say, and a thought flashes through my mind. Why would Tom be here? I think. I'm here on official business, he says. My heart is racing. I think back to all the shows on TV where a police officer informs the next of kin of a death in the family. He's still talking when I whisper, "Is Kurt okay?" "No, Sue." He keeps talking, but all I can think about is that Kurt is dead. Then I hear him say something about, "He's broken and can't talk to you." "So he's alive," I say, and my heart skips another beat. "Yes, but he's in very bad shape." I press my hands to my mouth, trying not to choke. The door slowly opens and he looks at David lying on the bed. I blush with embarrassment and horror. Then he holds something out to me and says, "You've been served," and pulls out his phone and takes a picture. I'm confused. "What?" I say as he turns and walks away. "What?" I don't understand what's going on. "What?" I repeat, completely confused. Oh my God, I say, falling to the floor. "Look on the bright side, Sue. Now we can go outside and not hide it." Oh my God, I repeat. After a few minutes of lying on the floor, I get up and grab my phone. I try to call Kurt, but the call goes straight to voicemail. "Kurt? I just got a call from Tom. He said I was right. She was there with a guy. He was lying naked on the bed and she was in a robe." "Thanks, Tom. I appreciate you doing this for me," I said numbly. "Are you going to be okay?" he asked. I don't know, Tom. I'll call Marcia and ask her to come over to be with you, he said. I don't need her to do that. In fact, I just need to be alone, I say. Thanks, I'll talk to you later. I hang up the phone and turn it off. I don't want to talk to anyone. I just want to think about my marriage and my future. Sue. I need to get in touch with someone. Find out what hospital he's in, I mumble. He's not in a hospital, Sue, David says, confused. You heard him. He said he broke down and can't talk, I state. That's not what he said, Sue. He said his heart is broken and he can't talk to you. I'm sure physically he can talk to you. He just doesn't want to. What, he said that? Yes, Sue. You will soon be a free woman. I started thinking about my marriage and the future. It looks bleak. I hurriedly get dressed. What are you doing? David asks. I have to go. I have to talk to him. Didn't you tell me you're more like neighbors than husband and wife? What's the difference? He asks. I just have to talk to him, I say sternly. What about the room? I'm renting it for the weekend. He objects. Well, enjoy it. I grab my bag and head out the door. Sue, he doesn't want to talk to you, he says. Well then, I'll just talk on my own and hope he listens, I say as I close the door. Thoughts rush through my head as I head to my Yukon, the SUV that Kurt bought for me. What am I going to say? I ask myself as I get in the Yukon and drive out of the parking lot. My phone rings and I look at the caller ID, hoping it's Kurt, but it's David. Really? You left? Yeah, I'm gone. What about our weekend? How about giving each other the pleasure you haven't known in years? I guess you'll have to pleasure yourself, I said, and hung up. Men, I thought, all they want to do is entertain women. And I had already been on the phone for half an hour and had called Kurt's voicemail 5 times when the phone rang. Kurt, I'm on my way home right now. Can we talk about this? Bitch. I hear, and immediately my phone goes dead. I look at the phone. It wasn't Kurt, it was David. At this point, I didn't care if he thought I was a bitch. Another half hour goes by and 5 more calls when I see lights behind me. Oh shit, I say. I look down and see I'm going 97 miles per hour. I wonder what the fine would be for going 17 miles over the speed limit. When I pull over to the side of the road, a policeman leisurely walks up to my car door. He must be checking my license plates. I'm usually a good driver. I haven't had a ticket in over 15 years. Maybe he'll get off with a warning. As he approaches the driver's door, I roll down my window. I already have my license and registration ready to give to him. What's the rush? He asks. I need to get home to my husband. There's been a misunderstanding and he's not returning my calls. He looks at me questioningly. Why isn't he returning your calls? He says, looking at my license. He has a grudge against me, I say. As he stands there, I see him looking in my truck at a manila envelope on the passenger seat. He points to the envelope. It looks like this is much more serious than just a misunderstanding. I start to cry. Where are you coming from? From Sioux Falls, I say, snorting. That's a long way from Aberdeen. What were you doing in Sioux Falls? From the tone of his voice, he guesses why I was there. Nonsense, I say softly. He hands me back my license and registration and a 17-point speeding ticket. Don't speed, he says. He walks back to his patrol car. Damn, men, all they want to do is entertain me. I pull onto the road, slowly accelerate to 79 miles per hour, and put on cruise control. I watch him chase me for about 5 miles. With each mile, my blood pressure rises. Over the next hour, I try to call Kurt dozens of times. Damn it, Kurt, turn your phone on, I yell in desperation. Kurt, it's been about an hour and a half since Tom called me. I was sitting in my chaise lounge and decided it was time to call the kids. How do I break the news to them? I say out loud. Turning on my phone, I see that I have several voicemails from Sue. I don't want to hear what she has to say. I call Glenn, my oldest, first. Hi, Daddy, he says, picking up the phone. Hey, Glenn, how's the new job going? Great, Daddy. I can't believe I'm getting paid to design buildings. I love it. I hope you love your job until you retire. So why are you calling me? He asks. Well, son, I have some news I want to share with you. Are you okay, Dad? Physically, yes. Emotionally, no. What do you mean? Glenn, you can't just say that. I'm divorcing your mother. There's stunned silence on the other end of the line. After about a minute, he says quietly, "What did she do?" I realize from his tone that he's already guessed. She decided that doing something with someone else was more important than doing it with me. Really? What the hell? How long has this been going on? He asks. I'm not sure, but I think a few months, I say. Man, I'm sorry my dad says that. Yeah, I'm sorry to have to tell you. So what are you going to do? He asks. I sued her this morning. I'm divorcing her. You don't think you can settle? He asks. Glenn, if Janie cheated on you, what would you do? I ask. He thinks for less than a minute, then says, she'd leave. I'd kick her ass out. Janie is Glenn's steady girlfriend. In fact, Glenn confessed to me that he's going to propose to her on New Year's Eve. He's already bought the ring on an installment plan. I'm so happy for them. Please don't call your sisters. I want to tell them. I'll try to reach them tonight. I won't, Daddy. I'll call you tonight and we'll talk it over again. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you for understanding. We'll get through this, Daddy. Don't hate Mom for this. That's between me and her. She's still your mom, and she needs your support. I don't know how much support I can give her, Dad, he stated. I know, but you have to try, I said. Okay, Daddy, she's still my mom. I love her even though I don't like what she did. I understand, Glenn. I love her too. I just don't like her anymore. I'm sorry, Dad. You don't deserve that. Take care of yourself, son. You too, Dad. Bye. See you, Dad. I hung up the phone and sat staring into space. I was in deep thought. At that moment, my phone rang and I answered it without even thinking. Hello? I said. There was silence on the other end of the line for a few seconds. Then, a voice spoke up. Kurt? Oh, Kurt, thanks for answering. We need to talk about this. I ended the conversation. It was Sue, and I didn't want to talk to her. I turned the phone off and sat staring at it. Someday I would need to talk to her, but not now. Sue. I got Kurt on the phone, but he hung up before I could say what I wanted to say. Frankly, I was surprised he answered. I'd gotten voicemails so often that I didn't expect to meet him in person. But now that he'd answered, I was overcome with anxiety. What would I tell him? How would I explain my behavior? Sure, I could apologize, but what else? I decided I needed to think and gather my thoughts about what I would say when we finally talked. I was driving in deep thought when I heard a zing, and thought, what was that? I got back into the Yukon and looked at the dashboard. A low fuel message popped up. I had never heard or even seen that before. Kurt always made sure my tank was full. I'd never had to fill up on my own. I wasn't sure how far I could drive before I ran out of gas, so I immediately started looking for a gas station. I found a gas station, not the most famous one, but it has gas, and that's the most important thing. I get out of the car, grab my purse, and pull out my debit card. I insert the card, enter the number, and pull out the nozzle. I turn around and look for the gas tank cap. Shit, I say. It's on the other side of the truck. I hang the nozzle back in place, sit back down, and turn the truck around. I had to put the debit card back in and pull the nozzle back out. Now I couldn't get the gas tank door open. I pulled on it, but there was nowhere for my finger to go to open it. I didn't remember there ever being a button on the dashboard to open it. I looked around, but no one else was refueling, and I couldn't ask for help. I put the nozzle back in place and went inside. There was a guy sitting behind the counter watching TV. A loud noise came from the hall. Looking closer, I saw it was a rerun of Jerry Springer's show. Excuse me, I said. What can I do for you? He replied, barely taking his eyes off the screen. I don't know how to get to the gas tank cap. He looked at my car and asked, how long have you been driving it? A couple years, but my husband puts gas in it for me. I just press the right edge of the door and it will open. Suddenly the crowd at the TV got loud and buzzed. The guy behind the counter looked at the TV and said softly, what a bitch. What? I asked. Sorry, not you. That's the woman from the show. He pointed to the TV. I looked closer and saw a caption at the bottom of the screen. It read, I cut off my husband, but not my boyfriend. I stood there and watched the woman say, he's a great father and provider, but I'm no longer satisfied with him in the bedroom. I just stared at her, And then the clerk said, "I can't believe that bitch. How could she do that to him?" I felt I had to defend her. Maybe she needed to feel like she was still beautiful. If her husband doesn't give her that feeling, then she should just divorce him. I know that if I were him, I would dump her like a bad habit. I'd kick her to the curb. I couldn't say anything. That's what Kurt was doing to me. I blushed, turned around, walked out, and mindlessly headed for my Yukon. I opened the gas tank hatch, removed the cap, pulled out the nozzle, and inserted it into the hole. I turned around and inserted the debit card again. It didn't authorize. I went back and asked the salesman why. "Let me try here," he said. He tried it and said, "It's not working. Do you have another card?" Oh no. I thought, did Kurt cancel my card? I pulled out my wallet and handed him my MasterCard. Thankfully, it was still working. "It's okay. I thought maybe your cards were canceled." He looked at me with an expression that said, "I bet they'll be canceled soon." I refueled and drove off, my mind spinning with the possible consequences of my actions. I tried calling Kurt again, but again I got voicemail. "Kurt?" I didn't expect to hear Sue on the other end of the line. I thought it was Glenn calling me back with something to say. I was going to tell her about it when we talked. I wondered where she was calling me from, so I checked her GPS. She was just over halfway back to Aberdeen. I don't want to talk to her. I have somewhere to go. I don't want to be here when she gets back. I go upstairs and pack a couple bags. When I get back to the living room, I see a picture above the fireplace of us as a family when the kids were little. Those were happier times. Finances were tight back then, but we were happy raising our 3 children. There was our wedding picture hanging on the mantle. I just stared at it. She had destroyed our family. I walked over to the mantle, picked up the picture and hit it with my fist. The glass in the frame shattered and blood appeared on my knuckles. I took off my wedding ring and placed it on the mantle and put the picture face down. I looked around and then walked out to the car, leaving the door unlocked. I drove off, intending to spend the night in a hotel. Checking into my room, I called Julia, my second child. "Hi, Jules," my nickname for her. "Hi, Daddy. How are you doing?" "Do you have time to talk?" I asked. "Sure, Daddy, that sounds serious." "It is, honey." "Talk, I'm listening." "Jules, your mom and I have a problem." "Daddy, you and Mom had a problem before I left for college 2 years ago. What's the problem now?" "Well, you know we both love you, all of you guys. It's just that there have been recent events that have taken things to the extreme. This isn't going to be easy to say. We're getting a divorce." "Dad, I hate to hear that, but honestly, it doesn't surprise me. Before I left for college, you two used to fight a lot. You never seemed to get along with each other. I don't know what the reason was, but I'll tell you this. You two weren't the parents I grew up with." That was my Jules. She was always perceptive. She knew almost immediately that Glenn or Rachel was worried or upset about something, even before Sue and I noticed anything. "Well, kids, it had nothing to do with you. It was something between me and your mom. Have you tried seeing a counselor? That might help." "I don't think it's that important right now, honey," I said. "I'd like you to try talking to your father. I'd hate to see you alone." "I'll think about it," I said, not very convincingly. "Really, Dad, think about it. Talk to someone before you decide to give it all up." "I'll think about it," I said with more conviction in my voice. "I've already talked to Glenn and told him, and I'll call Rachel a little later. Don't worry, Jules. I'll keep you posted on developments." "Thanks, Dad," she said with a hitch in her voice. I could tell she was about to cry. "I'll let you go. I love you. Remember that. We both love you." Now I was the only one who was going to cry. "I love you too, Daddy." I hung up and turned the phone off, unable to speak. I gasped and started to cry. "Why is she doing this to us?" I said out loud. 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 I sat on my hotel room bed and cried for about 10 minutes. I cried for the 26 years that had been wasted. Sue. As I pulled up to the house, I noticed that Kurt's car wasn't there. I guess I knew she wouldn't be there. I got out of the car and walked to the front door. I didn't need the key. When I grabbed the handle, it opened immediately. That was unusual. Kurt must still be here. Maybe his car is in the garage. I walk in and cautiously call his name. There is no answer. He must be here. He never leaves the door unlocked. I make my way inside, but the house seems too empty. I look around and don't notice anything has changed. I look at the fireplace and see the family photo still hanging there, reminding me of better times. Then I notice our wedding picture. It's lying face down on the mantel. I walk over and pick it up. I notice the glass is broken. Part of it is lying on the mantel, and among the glass is Kurt's wedding ring. Oh my God, what have I done? Kurt? After crying, I turn my phone back on to call Rachel, my daughter. Hi, Daddy. I tried to call you, but the answering machine picked up. But I couldn't leave a message, it's full. Hi, Rachel. What was the reason you called? Dad, Julia called me. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to ask her not to call you. I wanted you to hear it from me first, so what did she tell you? You're getting a divorce. Is that true? Yes, I filed, I said. Well, I can't say I'm surprised. Huh? I said. Dad, you and Mom fought for a couple years, and then, about a year and a half ago, you just stopped talking. You hardly talked at all. All you did was discuss bills that needed to be paid, chores, and whether or not you were going out with friends this weekend. It took me a few seconds to realize this. My youngest daughter had determined years ago that we were no longer acting like a married couple. It came as no surprise to her that we were divorcing. She didn't even ask why or why now. Wow, I guess I didn't even realize it, I told her. Dad, we all know you both love us. I just don't know if you love each other. If you do, you don't show it. Daddy, you have to do what will make you happy. I wouldn't want you to live in a loveless marriage for the rest of your life just because you're supposed to, or because of us kids. We're adults now. Rachel, you always told it like it is. Thank you. You made this decision so much easier. I love you. I love you too, Dad. I'll support you no matter what happens. I'll always be there for you. You're my daddy. I gasped. I have to go, I said. I'll call you tomorrow. I hung up and turned the phone off. Now I really didn't feel like talking to anyone. Sue. Name! My phone rang and I looked at it and saw that it was Julia calling me. How would I talk to her? What would I say? After the third ring, I answered. Hi, Julia, how are you? How are you? Is that really the best question? Great, why? I asked, hoping Kurt wasn't talking to our kids. My dad called me, she said. And what did he have to say? I asked, still not realizing she knew. I hoped she didn't know anything. He said you're getting a divorce. I sighed. We're not getting a divorce. It's just a misunderstanding. Well, it sounded more serious when I talked to him. We'll get over it, I told her, trying to convince myself as well. Rachel said he already applied, she told me. Yes, I got the application this morning. I said solemnly. I know that before I left for college there was a lot of tension between you two, and you fought a lot. Rachel said that after I left for college you stopped fighting and hardly ever spoke. Did it really last that long? After years of fighting and tiptoeing around each other, it was nice not to fight anymore. We just went about our business, doing what had to be done. I think you and Dad should go to counseling. It might help your relationship, she said. That sounds like a good plan. I'll discuss it with him if I get a chance to talk to him, I said. What do you mean? I keep trying to call him, and he doesn't answer. I'm at home right now, and he's not there. Do you know where he went? Did he say when you talked to him? No, Mom, I thought he was home with you. No, he's gone. And if I know your father, he's gone somewhere I can't find him. I thought where he might be, a hotel or a friend's house. We should check to see if he took a change of clothes. I walked up to our room. The doors and drawers were open. Julia, I need to try and find your father. I'll call you if I find him. If you hear from him, please tell him to call me. Sure, Mom. I'll call you tomorrow if I don't hear from him sooner. Thank you, Julia. I love you. I know, Mom. I love you too. Kurt? I wasn't particularly hungry, but I hadn't eaten all day, so I ordered pizza delivery. I thought about what Rachel had said. We hadn't been much like each other for the last 3 years, menopause be damned. Why couldn't she get hormone replacement therapy? It would have relieved a lot of the problems. That's when it all started. Her doctor told her it would help her through menopause, but she didn't want to take any medication. Even after Rachel was born, I had to wear rubber bands because she didn't want to get pregnant and also didn't want to take birth control. While we were trying to have kids, I liked the feeling of not wearing rubbers, so I decided to have a vasectomy instead of wearing rubbers. When the pizza arrived, I sat on the bed, watched TV, and ate pizza. I can tell you that there isn't much worth watching on a Saturday night. My brain wasn't consumed by it. It was just background noise. Sue. I turned on the TV but found nothing to take my mind off my worries. Thoughts were swirling around in my head, and the TV was just background noise. When I saw the empty closet and drawers, I felt everything fall into place. Strange, you'd think filing for divorce would have that effect. Having an actual physical sign that my husband had left me meant that I wouldn't be able to just talk myself out of it. Perhaps my marriage really was over. Tonight, I will not be dealing with empty drawers in a closet, but sleeping in one of the kids' rooms. Oh God, I should call Glenn and Rachel. Try to get them on my side. Maybe if they all talk to Kurt, they can at least get him to talk to me. Maybe they'll even consider marriage counseling. I picked up the phone and called Glenn. The phone rang 4 times, then someone answered. I heard, "Glenn, it's your mom. You need to talk to her." It was Janie, Glenn's steady girlfriend who would soon be his wife. He confided in Kurt and I that he was going to propose to her on New Year's Eve. "I don't want to talk to her," I heard in the background. "Glenn, pick up the phone. You need to talk to her," she said. Then to me, "He'll be right there, Mom." I guess that answered one of my questions. Kurt must have told him why he was divorcing me. "Mom," he said without emotion. "Oh, Glenn, you have to help me get your father to talk to me." "I don't even want to talk to you. Why would Daddy want to do that?" he said. Oh God, this could ruin my relationship with both my son and my husband, I thought to myself. "Glenn, I don't know what Dad told you, but I know we can work things out if he just talks to me." "I don't think so, Mom. Anyway, I don't know where he is, and if you can't reach him, I'm sure his phone is disconnected." "Well, if you hear from him, please ask him to call me." "Okay, Mom, but I'm not going to ask him." "Thanks, Glenn. I love you." He hung up without even saying goodbye. Next, I called Rachel. "Hi, honey, how are you doing?" I said when she answered, trying to keep the conversation light. "I'm doing fine, Mom. How are you?" She was trying to keep the conversation light, too. I wondered why. "Have you heard anything about your dad?" I asked. "Yeah, he called me today. Honestly, Mom, I expected him to call me a year ago, right after I left for college." "What makes you think that?" "Mom, you and Dad barely spoke during my senior year of high school. I never once saw you touch each other, let alone kiss. I think you both need to find someone you'll be happy with." Rachel, my youngest, has always been a pragmatist. I even feel sorry for the guy she ends up with. She's bound to tell it like it is. And if he doesn't like it, she won't care. She'll probably find someone to put her in her place, though. "If you could ask him to talk to me, I'd really appreciate it. I think he'd listen to you." She's his girlfriend. Of course he'll listen to her. "Okay, Mom. I hope he calls you." "Me too, Rachel. Me too," I said when we were done talking. My son was pissed at me, and my youngest daughter didn't seem to care if we divorced or not. Wow, I really screwed up. I stayed up until almost midnight, but neither the kids nor my husband called. I decided to go to bed alone. I stayed in Julia's room, and I felt a little better because at least she wanted us to go to counseling. Kurt. I was depressed. Truth be told, I hadn't gotten enough sleep the last 2 weeks and I was depressed. The adrenaline from the day was gone. I went to bed and slept the sleep of the dead until 11 o'clock Sunday morning. I showered and didn't shave. When I sat down to eat my warmed-up pizza, I decided to call my kids and let them know I was still alive. They were all happy to hear from me and also told me that Sue had called and asked me to call her. I decided today was the day. We would talk, and if hell didn't freeze over, I would proceed with the divorce. I dialed a number I knew well, and she picked up on the first ring. "Oh, Kurt, thanks for calling. I want to apologize first. The kids asked me to call you. What do you need?" I said unemotionally. "I want to talk. Can we do that?" "We're talking right now, so talk." "No, I mean face to face. Why don't you come home and we can sit down and talk about it together?" I thought for a second, then said, "Sure, I need to pick up a few things I forgot." That should have let her know how I felt about it. "Can you come over at 2 o'clock?" she said, ignoring my last remark. "Sure. And your lover will be gone by then?" That should have pushed the knife even further. "Oh, Kurt, I'm sorry, but there's no one else. I'll see you at 2 o'clock." Then I hung up the phone. I wondered if anyone was there now or had been before. Maybe I would do a little recon and see for myself. I got in my car and drove past the house. There were no cars in the driveway, but maybe he parked in the garage. I parked on a neighboring street and watched him for about half an hour. No one showed up or left. Well, looks like she wasn't lying. Perhaps I should shave before I go back, I said to myself. I went back to the hotel, shaved, dressed in a nice business suit, and even put on some aftershave cream. Let her see what she threw out. Sue. Finally, he called me. He was brief, unemotional, and even made a vindictive remark. But he was going to be there at 2 o'clock. I had to get ready. First, I would make dinner so we could talk over a meal. And then I would go dress nicely so he could see what he was throwing away. Confrontation. Parking on the street, I set the tone from the start. I don't even want to park in my own driveway. The response resounded. Why is he parking on the street? The driveway is clear. He could even park in the garage, thought I. As he walked down the driveway, I noticed he was dressed pretty well for a weekend. Usually on the weekends, he walks around in a t-shirt and jeans. I have to greet him at the door and thank him for coming. The door opens and there is Sue standing on the doorstep with a concerned, questioning smile on her face. She looks quite decently dressed. Is it just me? Or does she have a date tonight? I ask myself. Opening the door, I smile at Kurt, but realize the smile probably looks strained. I was happy to see him, but worried about what was going to happen. Why did you park on the street? Oh, and thanks for coming, I say nervously. You're welcome, and I wasn't sure if there was anyone in the garage that needed to get out. I said this and saw an angry expression appear on her face. Great. My punch had had the desired result. This was not a pleasant encounter. Kurt had pissed me off with that comment, but I wasn't going to respond. I wanted this meeting to be pleasant so we could discuss our future together. If I had to put up with my husband's childish behavior, I would put up with it. Come in, I made dinner. Everything is ready. Sit at the table. I came to talk, not to eat. Can't we do both? We can have a nice meal while discussing our problems. No, I'm not hungry. I have somewhere to go once we're done, I said. Okay, I lied. I had nowhere to go, but she didn't need to know that. So that's why he's dressed up like that, I thought to myself. One day and he's already dating some whore after he leaves here. Oh, I said. And you can't call and cancel a date. Who is this guy anyway? I regretted saying it right after I uttered it. I don't have a date. I don't go on dates when I'm married, unlike someone I know. I told her. That pissed me off. Oh shit, I thought to myself. I just blew this meeting. How could I say that to him? I'm sorry, Kurt. My emotions took over. Did they take over you Friday night and Saturday too? I asked her. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, Kurt. Please forgive me. I don't think that will ever happen, Sue. Saying that, I saw her shoulders slump. She probably considers herself defeated, but I'm just getting started. Well, you asked me to come here to talk. Let's talk. I made my way into the living room and sat down in a chair, and she settled across from me on the couch. Okay, Kurt, I'm sorry, she said. Snap. Are you sorry for what you did or for getting caught? I sat there for a minute, pondering. Which is it? If I was truthful, then I'm sorry I got caught. If I hadn't been caught, I would have sat there until tonight. But I was sorry I hurt him since he found out. I'm sorry I hurt you, I decided. That doesn't answer my question, Sue. I could see her agonizing over the main question. Kurt, I don't know, I said quietly. Sue, you have to answer all my questions truthfully. If you lie to me, we'll never have a relationship again. I will, Kurt. Ask me anything. Did you feel any guilt Friday night driving to Sioux Falls? Yes, I answered honestly. Where did you meet him? How did it come to this? He's a salesman who comes into our company once a week. He's always been very nice to me. So how did you go from meeting him for a couple minutes once a week to having fun with him on the weekends? I shuddered. That's all it was, entertainment. I like David, but it's not going anywhere in the long run. After all, I'm married, at least for now, I thought. He asked me to lunch, and I said yes. What's wrong with that? Tell me, what's wrong with that? Nothing if it was just one lunch, but we started going to lunch every week when he made sales calls. And how long did that last? It went on for several months. And you didn't think there was any problem with that? He was so nice, complimenting me and my looks. He made me feel young again. So that's all it takes to get in your pants, compliments, and niceties? I had to put that remark in since I hadn't gotten in her pants in over 3 years. No, Kurt, we were just comfortable with each other and then he asked me to go with him to a bed and breakfast for the weekend. So he was the first. He must not have been the first because I'm sure other guys have been nice and complimented you. When was the first time? I've never done it before him, Kurt. You have to believe me. No, I don't have to believe you, I said loudly. When was the first time and with whom? Friday night, with David. She did it, she lied. You don't spend hours in a hotel room just talking. I stood up without saying a word and walked to the front door. Where did he go? I thought as he got up and started to walk away. He headed for the door. Kurt, don't leave. We're not done talking yet. I got up and followed him. He turned around and looked at me with a mixed expression of sadness and hatred on his face. Sue, you lied to me. I told you that if we were going to have any kind of relationship, you had to answer my questions truthfully. You lied, Sue. You lied. Oh my God, I lied. I thought, how did he know about the time we spent together a couple weeks ago? God, I'm stupid. Of course he knew. How else could he get me to serve if he didn't know? I collapsed back onto the couch, resting my head on my hands and cried. I'm sorry, Kurt. I lied. We were already together about 2 weeks ago. I took the day off and we went to a hotel. How did he find out about the incident? He was working late that night. I had even cooked his favorite meal that had gone cold and was waiting for him to come home. Oh my God, he knew. He came late on purpose and I yelled at him for not calling me. I thought to myself. So what are we going to do next, Kurt? I asked. You're going to get yourself a lawyer and we're going to get a divorce. So you're going to ruin a good marriage over this? Yes, 23 years of a good marriage gone bad. Kurt, it's been 26 years. He couldn't even remember how many years we'd been married. Yes, but only 23 years of a good marriage. The last 3 were a waste of my time. Now I was out of my mind. He thought the last 3 years were a waste of time. How could he think that? I jumped on him. Screw you, Kurt. Not the last 3 years. What did he say? I thought. Then I said, oh, not the last 3 years? What do you mean? I mean we haven't had fun in over 3 years. Is that what this is about? Sex? Yes, sex, you can give it to someone else, but your husband you have cut yourself off for over 3 years. How many conversations, discussions, and arguments have we had because of that? I pondered. We had nothing, no real intimacy for over 3 years. I didn't want or need him when menopause hit. I begged, tried to get you, and even pleaded with you, but you told me to get over it. Well, I guess that's what I'll do with it. I'm just sorry I put it off for so long. So you're giving up on our marriage? Rachel noticed it long before I did. She just told me yesterday that I have to do what makes me happy and that I can't live in a loveless marriage just because that's the way it has to be. I told her. So you're throwing away our marriage? What do you think we should do, Sue? Julia thinks we should go to counseling. I think that's a great idea. For what purpose, Sue? So that we can live happily ever after until death do us part. Nice, I remember those vows. I also remember forsake all others. Have you forgotten that, or does it not matter? As far as I'm concerned, once you've broken a vow, all others don't mean anything anymore. But I still love you, Kurt. You have a strange way of showing it. I told her, goodbye, Sue. Get a lawyer. With those words, I walked out the door. Sue. He walked out the door. All my plans for a nice dinner and conversation went to waste. I had hoped that I could explain myself, that he would understand me, that I needed to feel attractive and desirable to a man 10 years younger than me. Now I am an old woman, unable to have children, slowly trudging to the end of the road. I sat and cried for I don't know how long, probably at least an hour. When the phone rang, it brought me out of my daze. I looked at the receiver. It was Julia. Mom, are you okay? Did you get through to Daddy? I asked him to call you. Did he call? Yes, Julia, he called. I asked him to come over. He came over. We had a fight. Then he left. Oh, Mom, I'm so sorry. Did he even tell you why he was filing for divorce? I already knew why, Julia. He just said it straight out. So why? I had to face facts. Sooner or later, everyone would find out, and there was no reason to try to hide it. I cheated on him, I said in a quiet voice. What? I was stupid, and he found out. He even made me serve when I was with a guy. I'm so ashamed, I never meant for that to happen. Why was I an idiot? Soon I'll be an almost 50-year-old divorced idiot. I started crying again. I couldn't believe I had any tears left. Oh, Mom, how could you? I knew you and Daddy didn't get along, but how could you? I'm sorry, Julia. I know we fought a lot, but I still love him. And now he's gone. So maybe he just needs time. Maybe you can work it out with the help of a counselor. I'd like to think so, but I don't hold out much hope. Your father is a proud, stubborn man. He'll never forgive me. So because of his male ego and pride, he's willing to destroy your marriage. I've asked him that too, but honestly, for the past few years our marriage hasn't been the same and it's my fault. I started crying even harder and dropped my phone. Mom, 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 Julia screamed. I picked up the phone. I'm sorry, honey, I dropped the phone. Mom, I'm going home. Maybe I can get Daddy and we can talk things over. Honey, I think this is a waste of time. I don't care. I'm going home. I'll see you in a few hours. Nevem. My daughter was about to come home from college to try to talk her father into getting his cheating wife back. What had I done? My selfish need to be desirable to another guy caused my life to fall apart and my family is paying the price? Kurt, I just talked to Julia. She's coming home from college to try to save this marriage. It can't be saved anymore. 3 years of putting up with Sue's crap is what turned me away from our marriage. And the fact that she gave the other guy what she denied me all this time was definitely the match that lit the fuse to the destruction of that marriage. I don't usually drink, but here I felt like hitting the nearest bar. I turned off my phone and walked out the door of my hotel room. Let them try to find me. Sue. Julia arrived and tried to call Kurt, but the call went straight to voicemail. His cell phone was turned off. It was getting late and I decided I just wanted to go to bed. Tomorrow I'll go to work sick. Then I'll try to meet up with Kurt. Kurt. I spent a couple hours sipping beer. I wasn't drunk, but I wasn't in pain either. I set the alarm on my phone for 6 o'clock and then listened to my messages. There were a few from my wife, the usual apology nonsense. Then there were 2 from Julia, asking if we could meet tomorrow when I got home from work. I wasn't going to work, I had things to do. I had a lawyer to meet with and some banking issues to take care of. For now, I was going to sleep and hope I didn't have a hangover in the morning. Sue. I didn't get much sleep. I did fall asleep, though, as I was exhausted from the events of the weekend. I woke up to the smell of bacon. Kurt always made breakfast on the weekends. Was this all a dream or more of a nightmare? Was it really Saturday morning and I was still happily married? Then Julia called from downstairs and I realized the nightmare was real. I got up, called work, and asked for a sick day. There was no way I could go to work today. I had things I had to do. Together with Julia, I had to plan how to get Kurt back. I also had to get the other 2 kids on my side, as well as Janie. Kurt liked her and thought she would be a good fit for Glenn. Breakfast was good. I hardly ate anything yesterday. The food I made for Kurt went to the refrigerator as leftovers. I think Julia and I will split them between us. I called Rachel and Glenn and left messages for them to call me. Rachel was undoubtedly in class and Glenn was at work. I called Janie. She worked in retail, so she had Mondays off. Hi, Janie. This is Glenn's mom. Do you have time to talk? Sure, Mom. She had been calling me that for a year now. It made me feel good to know that she liked me and that she felt comfortable enough to address me that way. How's Glenn? He's freaking out, doesn't even want to talk about it. Janie, could you ask him to call me? I need to talk to him about his father. What's going on, Mom? I did something that upset his father and now he wants to destroy our marriage. Oh no, I can't believe it. You've been married for over 25 years. I can't believe you can't handle it no matter what. Love conquers all. I think we can if Kurt gives us a chance. That's why I'm calling. Could you call Kurt and just talk to him? Tell him how much you wouldn't like it if we got divorced? Sure, Mom, anything for you. I want to give you grandchildren someday and I'd like you to still be together. Thanks, Janie. I'd like that too. Kurt? I woke up and called in to work. Then took a shower and got dressed. I felt pretty good. My head hurt a little, but it was manageable. The first thing I decided to do was eat breakfast and then call my lawyer to make an appointment. When I got through to him, he said he had time later in the morning. Before that, I could go to the bank. After that, I would need to look for an apartment. I went to the bank, opened a separate account, paid off my credit card, and divided our funds, putting half into my account. After leaving the bank, I turned on my phone to get a list of apartment complexes. As soon as I turned it on, voicemails and messages popped up on the screen. Julia was calling and texting me. She wanted us to meet. It made me a little angry that Sue had made her drop out of college and come home to help her deal with the situation. I called her. Hey, Jules, you shouldn't have slacked off on your studies. I came home to see if I could save your marriage. This is my mom and I's business. You shouldn't get involved. Dad, this is our family and I'm trying to save it. I considered her words and replied, we'll still be a family even when your mom and I aren't together anymore. That's not going to change. Daddy, can we sit down and talk? I'd like to hear your point of view. I've already heard Mommy's. Okay, let's have lunch. How about Applebee's at 12:30? I should be done meeting with the lawyer by then, I thought. Sure, Dad, I'll see you there. Just you, Jules, not your mom. I figured Sue would come too, if I didn't forbid it. Okay, Dad, she said, somewhat disappointed. After meeting with the lawyer, I perked up. He said that given the picture Tom had created when he served Sue, he didn't think a divorce without adultery made sense. I didn't see it and didn't want to see it. If it would help me get a 70/30th split in the divorce, I didn't care what it depicted. I asked the attorney some procedural questions and he said, right now it's up to Sue and her attorney and how hard they fight back. Then the judge will make a decision. At 12:30, I met Julia for lunch. We sat down at the table and ordered. Then she asked, Daddy, do you love her? I sat pensive. I had been thinking about this all weekend. I don't think I do. I still have feelings, but I've thought about it for a long time and kept coming to the conclusion that I don't. So much has happened between us that we've drifted apart. Of course, she is still dear to me as a woman I have lived with for many years and have children with, but I think the love is gone. As I spoke, the expression of hope and despair changed on her face. Jules, I still love you and your brother and sister, and that will never change. I just don't see how we can go back after this. She sat in silence. Jules, you're all grown up and in college. Soon you'll be married and have a family of your own. We'll still be your parents. We'll just be living under two different roofs. I thought you two were going to live forever. Jules, you've been in several relationships. What do you think are the aspects of a good relationship, a good marriage? She took a deep breath, thought for a minute, and replied, first and foremost, love. Said, I just told you that I don't think I love her anymore. What else? Respect. Do you think I respect your mom now? And do you think she respects me, knowing she did what she did? I don't know. What else? I asked. Commitment, she said. What do you mean? I asked. Sticking to it when times get tough. Times have been hard for over 3 years, Julia. You know that. How long do I have to put up with it? I don't know. Okay, what else? Patience and forgiveness. I've been patient with her, but I don't think I can forgive her for what she did. It was just one time, Dad. No, it wasn't one time. Maybe it was just one guy. I don't know for sure, but it was at least one time plus a weekend together. She said it was one time. You need to talk to your mom about this. What I say won't change your mind. What else do you think makes a marriage good? Honesty. Do you think your mom has been honest with me? No, so I think another aspect is trust. I'm sure you won't trust her anymore. No, I don't think I can. What else? I asked. Good communication. Jules, before you left for college, what do you remember about our communication? You either fought or didn't talk at all. Is there anything else that makes a marriage good? Selflessness, a willingness to do anything for your partner, even if it's not what you want to do. That's good. You left out one aspect. What do you think it is? Well, physical intimacy, of course. That goes without saying. So I'd like you to ask your mom about that and see what she says. Julia looked at me with a puzzled expression. At that moment, the waitress walked in with the food. Jules, let's enjoy our food and change the subject. Let's have a great father-daughter dinner. Okay, she said. I could see she was trying to make sense of everything we just talked about. By the end of dinner, we were talking about school. boyfriends, politics, just about everything. But the elephant was still in the room. Jules, tell your mom to get a lawyer. It's the only way we can work something out. I will, Dad, she replied meekly. After lunch, I went to Central Park. I sat on a bench, just watching people and enjoying the fall day. As I sat there, I thought about my conversation with Julia. She had accurately described many of the reasons why I was divorcing Sue. I hoped it would be over quickly, but I doubted it. On Tuesday, I went back to work. I have to admit that my thoughts were not occupied with work at all. Sure, I was thinking about Sue, but I was also thinking about what kind of jerk was hitting on a married woman. He had to pay for it somehow. Karma could be a bitch, but I wanted to help her out a little. I needed to find out more about this David Perkins guy. All I knew was that he was a divorced 38-year-old man with 2 kids who worked at Heartland Paper. So I called in a private investigator. I gave him all the information I had on him, put a deposit on his debit card, and told him to contact me when he had dirt on him. I know it's stupid to throw good money on bad garbage, but I needed the information. And if Sue continued to see him, it would add fuel to the funeral pyre of my marriage. Then, around 3 in the afternoon, my friend and colleague Eric Van Dorn peeked into my office and said, "Are you free for lunch tomorrow?" "If you're buying, I'm free all week," I replied. "No, I'm not buying. We'll go to Holland because you know how they talk." "Yeah, yeah. If you're not Dutch, you're not much." He repeated the phrase so many times that I was ready to swear I heard it in my sleep. "Then I'll stop by tomorrow around noon, okay?" he asked. "Sure," I replied. Eric is the head of purchasing at our plant. That's a fancy title for someone who does purchasing. He's really good at it. If I didn't know better, I would think he was a woman, since he likes to store and on other people's money too. Plus, he's Dutch, so he always finds the best deals. I wouldn't say he's cheap, but that's only because I don't speak ill of my friends. That night, I sat in my hotel room, unable to decide which apartment to rent. There was no hurry, but I wanted a good one, because I could stay in it for a long time. The phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but I answered it anyway. "Hi, Dad." It was actually Janie, not my real daughter, but after Glenn and her had been dating for about a year, I insisted she call me Daddy. "Hi, Janie. What can I do for you?" "You can forgive your wife," she stated dismissively. "That's not going to happen anytime soon, Janie," I replied curtly. "Why? Don't you love her? Isn't she your wife? Doesn't she deserve your forgiveness?" "Janie, this is not a conversation we should be having," I said sternly. "I think love can conquer all things, so I think you can overcome this." "Janie, I don't mean to be rude, but our problems with Sue are ours to solve or not to solve. Don't try to interfere." Uh, she stammered. "Goodbye, Janie." I hung up the phone. I was furious. Sue was making others try to convince me to take her back. She was the one who should have been blaming herself, not me. Now I was worked up and I wasn't going to fall asleep anytime soon. I decided to go to the gym and run on the treadmill. Running allows me to let out my stored energy and think. I analyzed my life, all the good times. I will always have these memories with or without my marriage. What did the future hold for me if I got her back? All I could think about was that if I decided to stay in the marriage, I would never forget her actions, both 3 years before the affair and afterward. I would always dislike her. What kind of marriage would that be? Would I always want to get back at her for what she did? If I somehow managed to stay married, what kind of marriage would that be? Even more like the one we've had for the past 3 years. No thanks. I looked at the treadmill. I ran 4 miles and didn't even notice. Maybe I should get mad more often before running. It would help me run a marathon. I got off the treadmill and headed back to my room, drying myself off with a towel as I went. I'll sleep well now as I'm exhausted to the max. Sue. I went out to work again today. I was distracted but still got the job done. I was glad to get home even though it was so empty. Julia went back to school early in the morning. I got busy doing laundry to take my mind off my problems. As I carried the basket of dry laundry into our bedroom, the phone rang. I put the clothes on the bed and pulled out the phone. It was Janie. "Mom, I think Kurt is mad at me. I called him and told him he should forgive you and he quickly brushed me off. He's a stubborn man." "All men are like that, Janie," I explained. "Well, I think he's being stupid. You guys can get over it." "I hope so," I said. "Sorry, Mom. Glenn just walked in. I'll talk to you later." Now I felt guilty for dragging her into this. I didn't think Kurt would be rude to her. I guess I was wrong. I guess I don't know Kurt as well as I thought I did. Kurt. At lunch with Eric on Wednesday, as soon as we sat down at the table, he said, "What's going on with you, Kurt?" "What do you mean?" I asked. "You haven't been yourself for at least the last 2 weeks, and then you called on Monday. That's not you. You never miss work except when you go on vacation." "I didn't realize it was so obvious," I said. "It's not to most people, but to me it is." I was quiet for a minute, then said, "I'm getting a divorce." "What, really? I mean, you've been married forever." "No, only 26 years, and we won't make it to 27. "What happened?" "It started a long time ago, but the interesting thing is that she's having an affair." The restaurant seemed to go silent when I said that. Then Eric said, "Damn, I feel sorry for Kurt." "Yeah, me too. Do you think he'll make it?" "Absolutely not. I'm pissed at her for what she's done to me over the last 3 years. I'll never get over it." 3 years? She had an affair for 3 years? No, but 3 years ago she cut me off from herself. No romance, no teasing. Not even pleading changed anything. She told me to get over it. Well, I'm dealing with it now. Wow, what a bitch. Yeah, life is a bitch, but I intend to change that, I pronounced. So who is this guy? His name is David Perkins. He's a salesman for Heartland Paper out of Sioux Falls. He supplies mid-states with paper, so he makes the rounds every week. She's been having lunch with him for at least 3 months now. What an ass. I'm sure he knew she was married, he said. Yeah? Why don't we change the subject? I want to have a nice lunch and this is upsetting my stomach. Sure. The rest of lunch went fine and we didn't talk about my problems. Sue. Another day at work, business as usual. My boss pulled me into his office. Sue, what's going on? You don't seem like yourself. Problems at home, I'd rather not get into them, I replied. Well, don't let it affect your work. If you need to take time off to deal with things, let me know. No, I'll be fine. Sorry, I'll focus on work, I said. Okay, thanks. I need Sue, who I'm used to relying on. You have her, I said. The rest of the day I focused on work. It really helped me forget about my problems, if only for a little while. After work, I went home again to an empty house. Thursday at work, I looked at the clock. David stopped around 11:30 on Thursday. What am I going to tell him? What would he say to me? When he walked in, I flinched. He looked at me without any emotion on his face. He walked in and talked to my boss. Everything was fine. He discussed the week's order and future needs. When he walked out and closed the door, he looked at me and said, I can't believe you just left like that. Shh, not so loud. Why, don't you want anyone to know? Have you made up with your husband? Let's not talk about it here. Meet me at lunch and we'll talk about it, I said quietly. I didn't want my boss or anyone else to get any ideas. I would meet him at lunch and tell him that this whole thing was a mistake, that we shouldn't have done it. Or no. Okay, I'll see you at our usual place. I take it you're driving yourself. Yeah, I'll be there. At noon, I got out of the car and drove to Minerva's. He was sitting there in a booth. When I approached, he smiled and said, Have a seat. I sat down and said, David, I'm sorry about last weekend. It was a mistake. I shouldn't have agreed to this. So you didn't like it? You didn't like it? Yes, I liked it, I said, remembering how much time and attention he gave me. So what are you regretting? It was a mistake. I'm a married woman and it could cost me my marriage. You said yourself you were more like roommates. It doesn't sound like it cost you much. Well, I have to try to make up for it. So I got dumped halfway through a weekend getaway that I paid over $400 for, and you're apologizing. I looked at him. I hadn't seen that side of him yet. What does he want me to do, give him his room money back? Don't look at me like that, he said. You know exactly why we were going there. I was counting on spending the whole weekend with you. And I thought you wanted to spend time with me, not just, I said, getting up and getting ready to leave. Stupid bitch, he yelled. I hope he divorces you. I turned and glared at him and then walked away. Men only want one thing, I said, heading towards Yukon. I went back to work, picked myself up and finished the day trying to focus on work. Kurt. I got a call from a private investigator. He said my wife met the creep at lunch, but it didn't last long. They had an argument and she left. It won't change anything in the long run, but it made me feel better. Maybe she really regretted her decision. Sue. That night, I finally got a call back from Rachel. Hi, Mom. Did you call? Yes, why did you wait so long to call me back? Julia called me and told me why Dad is divorcing you. How could you? I know you were unhappy, but why didn't you just ask for a divorce? I wasn't unhappy. I don't want a divorce. That's a strange way to try to save your marriage. I don't blame Dad. I hope it was worth it. Oh God, Rachel, you have to help me through this. I know he'll listen to you. No, Mom, you're on your own. I was alone, sitting in an empty house trying to figure out how to fix my mistake. Every day it looked more hopeless. Kurt, my weekend was spent looking for an apartment. Sunday afternoon I found one that met my requirements. It had 2 bedrooms in case any of the kids wanted to stay. Sue. I spent the weekend looking around the house, remembering all the good times we had had, all the Christmases, Easters, birthdays, and Thanksgivings. Thanksgiving was only a couple weeks away. Would we be together on that day? Would there be much to be thankful for? I decided to make sure all the kids would be here. I called all the kids. Rachel and Julia confirmed when I told them I would invite Daddy and asked if they would ask him to come as a family too. Glenn was a little harder to convince, but with Janie in the background, he finally agreed. Now all that was left was to try to make this dinner bring back fond memories. Kurt? On Tuesday, I received an invitation in the mail. It was from Sue and invited me to Thanksgiving dinner at our house. I threw the invitation away. The only thing I was thankful for this year was that I finally made the decision to end all this nonsense. Over the next 2 weeks, I moved into my apartment, picked up furniture on Craigslist, and set up a new home for myself. I also got a call from Rachel saying that her mom had asked her to call me and invite me over for Thanksgiving. She understood when I said no. Glenn also understood when I said no. However, Julia begged me to change my mind, and although I had a hard time telling her no, I still said yes. Fortunately, Janie didn't call me. Apparently, she understood what I was talking about last time. The Monday before Thanksgiving, I was walking to my car after work and saw Sue's Yukon parked next to my car. She got out of the car as I approached. She was well-dressed and looked great. Confrontation Part 2. Kurt, I said with a smile and in my nicest voice. What do you want, Sue? I said very sharply. I never heard back from you about the invitation to Thanksgiving dinner. I'd really appreciate it if you'd come, and so would the kids. I hoped he couldn't say no in person, especially if I mentioned the kids. That's because I threw it away the same day I got it, I told her, hoping she understood what I was talking about. I hope you thought about it and changed your mind about coming for the sake of your family. I had to get him to focus on the kids. I already told the kids no when you asked them to call me. They know I'm not coming. Why don't you invite your lover instead of me? I'm sure he won't go to his ex-wife's since she remarried. Oh, but maybe he'll go to one of his other whores. You know he has 3 other women in mind and 2 of them are married. I think he likes to entertain married women. What was he telling me? David has 3 other women in mind besides me and 2 of them are married? He's not my lover. I've barely spoken to him since that weekend. I realized from the look on her face that she didn't know about the other women. The money I'd spent on a private investigator was worth it to see that expression on her face. Yes, I heard that you had a fight when you went to lunch with him next week. From the look on your face, I'm guessing he didn't tell you about his other women. Oh, Kurt, can't we just forget about it? I'll never do anything like that again. Go through this to come home to a loveless marriage? No thanks. If you want, I can give you that. I had to make him forget that objection. Sue, I can't make love to you because I don't love you anymore. I'm sure you weren't worried about being pregnant anymore, so he must have given you some kind of disease. If you haven't already, you should get checked out for your own good. Oh shit, I thought to myself. Kurt was right because I knew I couldn't get pregnant. I should probably get tested. I made a mental note to go see my doctor. I'm sure what Kurt said is true. He probably has other women besides me. I'm so stupid. Say, you haven't thought about it, have you, Sue? I told her. It's over. If you haven't already, get a lawyer and sign the papers, I told her. I will get a lawyer and fight this, Kurt. I know we can get back to normal. You'll see. So, well, at least we're making progress. She's going to get a lawyer. It's about time. I got in my car and drove away, and she stood there begging me to talk to her. Sue? He drove away, and we never resolved anything. God, I wish we had talked about it. I got in the Yukon and drove home, crying the whole way. Tuesday at work, I notice my boss is on edge. He tells me he has a meeting with the president and vice president, and it doesn't sound good. After the meeting, he comes up to me and tells me that after lunch there will be a mandatory meeting for everyone in the plant. At 2 o'clock, we fill the lunchroom. The president is there, and he opens the meeting by letting everyone know that they will have Friday off as well as Thanksgiving. There were a lot of happy faces. 4 days off. Then he gave us the bad news. Actually, he said, for the foreseeable future, you will have every Friday off. We have lost a major client and will be working no more than 32 hours a week, Monday through Thursday. You'll all keep your benefits, but we'll tighten our belts until we can find new accounts to cover the shortfall. The mood instantly changed from joyful to somber. When I returned to my desk, my boss turned to me and asked if I knew what was going on at 3M. As far as I know, nothing. Is this the account we lost? Yes, and it accounts for most of our sales. We have to either get it back, find new customers, or downsize. So far, all the unpaid employees are working no more than 32 hours. I can't believe this. Kurt did this out of spite. Dozens of families will be affected by this, and it's a month before Christmas. I can't believe he did this. It was nearing the end of the workday, and I overheard two female office coworkers talking. It's all Sue's fault. She just needed to unwind, and now we're paying for it. What? I thought, how did anyone know about this? Has everyone blamed it on me? As I walked around the office, I noticed people looking at me with a cold expression. At the end of the workday, I walked quickly to my Yukon, but that didn't stop me from hearing some of my coworkers calling me a bitch and a slut. I needed to talk to Kurt. I needed to return the 3M bill. I drove up to Kurt's work, parked in front of his car again, and waited for him to get out. Kurt? I pulled out of work and saw Sue's Yukon parked in front of my car again. I'm sure she'll try to talk me into coming over for Thanksgiving dinner again. But it's not going to happen. I don't want to be around her. I walk to my car, and then Sue comes out of the Yukon. I can tell she's pissed. Now what? I think to myself. You vindictive bastard? This catches me off guard. What? Don't look at me so innocently. You're being an asshole and you're going to ruin a bunch of people's Christmas just because you're mad at me. What are you talking about? I'm not ruining Christmas for anyone. The kids can see each of us individually. I'm not talking about our kids. I'm talking about the families of the people I work with. How can you? I don't know what you're talking about. We're already yelling at each other, and the people walking away start to stare. So you didn't make your company refuse to do business with my company just to mess with me. They're reducing the working hours to 32 hours a week. That's really going to prevent a lot of people from making holiday gifts, let alone paying their bills. I was surprised by her words. I wasn't doing anything. I can't control who we buy from. Then it hit me. Eric must have done it. Wow. And he hadn't even said anything to me. I didn't do it, but maybe your actions have unintended consequences. Maybe you should have thought longer about how your actions will affect those around you. Screw you! She shouted. No, thank you, no more, she yelled back at me. I got in my car and drove away. She was still furious, but a smile appeared on my face. I felt a little guilty in front of her coworkers, but maybe that's what she needed to realize the error of her ways. Sue. He walked away again. I was so angry with him that maybe it was for the best that we were getting divorced. How was I going to make things right? I was already being talked about at work. I'm sure it would be worse tomorrow. I drove home and walked into my empty house. I was starting to get used to it being empty. However, I wanted to keep the kids from moving away so there would be some life here. I had to make Thanksgiving a good one, despite their father's absence, and I started baking pies to take my mind off my problems for a little while. I loved to bake. I loved cooking in general. It's what I did for my family, and it made me happy. I can't wait until they are all home, enjoying a big home-cooked dinner. Kurt will miss it. At least I hope he does. Kurt? I pulled up to the apartment. It seemed empty. The furnishings were still very sparse. I kept thinking about what Sue had said. I knew that Eric had done it. I would ask him about it tomorrow, but I had no doubts. As I sat and ate my dinner in the microwave, I thought about what I was going to do for Thanksgiving. I guess I could join the other single people at Pizza Ranch. It wouldn't be a home-cooked meal, but it would still be delicious. On Wednesday at work, the first thing I did was track down Eric. Hey, Eric. My wife stopped by yesterday as I was getting off work. Yeah, I heard there was an explosion in your parking lot. What was it? I think you might know. Did you move our business from Mid-States Printing? Yes, I got a quote from Quality Quick Print, and they will save us about 2% off the cost of printing. I also changed the paper and board company to Cole's Paper out of Fargo. This will save us about 3%. I'm sure David Perkins will feel it when we stop using Heartland's services. Wow, I didn't realize you were such a jerk. Remind me to stay away from you. When someone hurts my friend, I do my best to hurt them back. What about all the people at Mid-States? My wife said they're cutting back on the number of hours they work. Well, I bet Quality is looking for experienced people. So what else have you been doing? I asked. That's it. I think that's enough. Wow, I didn't realize I had a friend like Eric. He has abilities. They say the quill is mightier than the sword. His quill just wreaked havoc on two people who hurt me. I almost regretted sending letters with pictures to the husbands of the other two married women David slept with. Let the chips fall where they will. Sue. I was called into my boss's office a few minutes after I got to work. Oh crap, thought I to myself. Sue, I'm told you might know the reason we lost the 3M account. I lowered my gaze to my hands. Yes, I knew it was because of me. I looked up. My husband denies knowing about it, but I'm sure it's revenge for something I did. What did you do? He asked, but I knew he'd already heard. I could tell by the look on his face. I was unfaithful to David Perkins. Why did you do that? He asked. I'm not getting any younger, and when a good-looking man 10 years younger than me shows interest, I feel desired. Well, that desire could have cost us our lives. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I messed up my life, and now others are paying for my mistake. I've been apologizing a lot lately, probably more in the last month than I have in my entire life. You know there are already rumors about this. It's going to be hard on you. I know, I've heard some of that already, I tell him. You've worked with me for almost 15 years, so I know your job. I don't condone what you did, but I won't punish you for it either. However, I cannot forbid others from speaking out against you. I will not tolerate offensive language, but I will draw the line here. Thank you. I will do everything in my power to try to make things right, I promised him. That would go a long way toward earning your forgiveness, he said. Thank you. Well, at least I kept my job for now. As I approached my desk, I felt a scornful look on my face. I was doing my job better than I had in years. I had to prove to my boss that I didn't stay here for nothing. Around 11 o'clock, I got a call. It was David. I can't believe you did it. That's what I heard when I picked up the phone. Did what? I asked. You made your husband get back at me. What are you talking about? He works for 3M, right? Yes, but what does that have to do with anything? His company just dropped us as a supplier. That's going to hit my sales and commissions hard. They also dropped us as a printer, so it won't just affect you. They've cut all of our work hours to 32 a week. I hear you guys are going to drop us, too. I wish I'd never met you guys. This is your fault. You're the one hitting on married women. Actually, I hear I'm not the only conqueror. You have at least 3 other women you're dating, and 2 of them are married too. Who told you that? My husband. So he's the one who sent the letters to their husbands. He's taking his anger out on me because his woman can't be faithful. All you women are bitches. I wish I'd never met you in the first place. If I don't lose my job, they'll probably give me the shittiest territory. Kurt, tomorrow is Thanksgiving. There's nothing to be thankful for. 26 years of marriage has faded into oblivion. I called all the kids and invited them over, making them promise not to give my mom my new address. We'll see if they come. Sue. I got up early, partly because I didn't sleep well, and partly because I need to stick the turkey in the oven and start making other dishes. I doubt I'll see Kurt, but still I haven't given up hope. Maybe he'll feel guilty for not showing up when all the kids are in. Around noon, the kids start to arrive. The food is almost ready. Is Daddy going to cook? Julia asks. I don't think so, dear, but we can hope, I say. I'll call him and invite him over again, she says. I realize this is probably a futile gesture. After 26 years of living with this man, I knew how stubborn he could be. I realized from the tone of the conversation that he wanted to tell her he wasn't coming. Well then, let's sit down and have a nice dinner without him, I said. We sat down at the table and were already halfway through when Julia said, I can't believe he's so stubborn. He should be willing to at least come to Thanksgiving dinner. Then we could all talk about it and maybe get forgiveness. Dad is suffering. His wife betrayed him, Glenn said as he looked at me, and I realized he was angry with me. Their marriage wasn't very strong for at least 3 years. They fought all the time and then they just stopped talking, Rachel said. Then, looking at me, she said, I'm sorry, Mom. You know it's true. What happened, Mom? Glenn asked. Why did you two start fighting? Were you having an affair then too? Wow, that hurt. My kids saw the destruction of our marriage and think I slept with someone 3 years ago? No, we were fighting about something else. I was faithful, well, until about a month ago. Why did you do that, Mom? Julia asked. Well, like you said, your dad and I haven't been getting along very well lately. We were more like roommates. One day a guy started flirting with me and suggested we go out to lunch. I thought, what's wrong with that? So I went with him. We did this every week for a few months. Well, then one thing led to another and we slept together, I said, trying not to look them in the eye. And now you want to get him back? Just forgive and forget? Move on with your life like nothing happened? Glenn asked. I know it's not that simple, but I'd like him to forgive me. I've apologized over and over again. He should forgive you, said Janie. What? Glenn looked at her as if she'd lost her mind. If he loves her, he should just forgive her, she said. How can you say that? Loyalty is the cornerstone of a good marriage, Glenn said. What? Love is the cornerstone. You can't build a relationship on fidelity alone, she said. You're right. Love is the cornerstone, and if you love someone, there's no way you'll be unfaithful, Glenn replied. But love conquers all. If he loved her, he would have forgiven her, she repeated. So you think that if you cheat on me, I should just forgive you? If you loved me, you would forgive me. You're going to cheat on me? Glenn asked accusingly. I don't think so. I don't have any plans, but you can't predict the future, she replied. So you can't make a commitment and say you're never going to cheat on me? I can say I won't, but if everything everyone says were fact, we wouldn't be getting divorced. Everyone would stick to their wedding vows. For better and for worse, in sickness and in health, until death do us part, she said. What about leaving everyone else behind? That too, she replied. You have to be willing to love and forgive those you love. I could see the situation was getting out of hand, so I said, let's not talk about it now, but just give thanks that we are all healthy and able to spend time together. I saw the look on Glenn's face. It was like he looked at Janie in a new light. As they say, the rose has bloomed. I'm sure they'll work things out, I said to myself hopefully. Kurt? The kids stopped by our house after talking to Sue. I was glad to see them. There was tension in the air. I hoped it would pass with time. I didn't talk about their mom. We just discussed school and Glenn's new job. My kids were adults now, they had their own lives, and they weren't my kids anymore. How time flies. As they were leaving, Glenn put his arm around me and quietly said, Dad, I need to talk to you. I'll call you tomorrow. I smiled and pretended he hadn't said anything. I wondered what he was talking about. I spent the rest of the day watching soccer, reminiscing about past Thanksgivings. On Friday, I got a phone call. Dad? Hey son, how are you doing? Dad, I think I need to break up with Janie. What? I replied. Why, have you always been in love with her from the first time you met her? Dad, the conversation at Mom's yesterday was about the impending divorce. I was sorry to hear that. I hoped that my and Sue's problems wouldn't be a problem for our children. Just because your mom and I couldn't last forever doesn't mean you should give up hope for your own relationship. Dad, we were talking, and Janie kept saying that you should just forgive her. When I questioned her about what Mom did, it seemed like there was nothing wrong with it. She just felt that if it happened to her, I should forgive her too. When I asked if she was going to cheat on me, she said, I don't think so, but I can't predict the future. I was shocked by that attitude. I know Glenn loves Janie, and I believe Janie loves him. Was she being realistic, or was she just so hung up on love conquers all that it was almost a license for everything, and if you love me, you'll forgive me? Son, I think you two need to work this out. Go to premarital counseling or something, but I think you both need to be on the same page on this. You both need to go into marriage with a clear understanding that there are some things that, no matter what, you will never do. Said that. I don't want to even talk to her about marriage until I have that certainty. I can understand that, I said. Think about premarital counseling. Thanks, Dad, I will. I hung up the phone thinking about what my son was going through, the questions, the indecision. It was something he had to decide for himself. However, I was concerned about Janie's attitude. Would she cheat on Glenn? Would she expect him to forgive her no matter what? What if he was on the other foot? What if Glenn cheated on her? What if it happened more than once? Would she continue to forgive him? It's a slippery slope if you haven't identified acceptable behaviors and made a commitment to the other person. Sue. The following week, I decided I had better see a lawyer. I explained my situation to him. I told him that I wanted to fight for a divorce. He assured me that at least we could get court-ordered marriage counseling. As I left the office, I was relieved at how my life had turned out and what the future held for me. Whether we stay married or not, I will be able to make my point and be heard. Kurt, my attorney, called. Sue had hired an attorney and wanted counseling to try to save the marriage. My lawyer said the judge will probably schedule it, so it's best to get it over with now to cut down on the time for a final divorce decree. Sue. I got Kurt to agree to see a marriage counselor. We're meeting today. Hopefully we can work out our problems and get past them. I know it can't be done in one session, but maybe if we have some time, we can work things out. Kurt? I went into the psychologist's office to get this over with. It might only take 1 or 2 sessions for the counselor to decide that the marriage is irreparable. The counselor is a woman, and I think she'll side with Sue. All I have to do is be patient and let her know that our relationship was doomed even before she cheated. That was just icing on the cake. The counselor asked me to tell her why I wanted a divorce. We have grown distant from each other and I don't feel the damage done can be repaired. And what do you think that damage is? She asked. 1. Trust. I don't think I'll ever be able to trust her again. 2. Communication. We haven't talked in years. 3. Love. I have lost my love for her. 4. Commitment and fidelity. She has devoted her time, energy, and emotions to another man and has done it with him, and more than once. So what do you think led to this? She asked. What was the root cause of all of this? I would say it started with her rejecting my love and intimacy. In short, she cut me off from any intimacy. Sue, would you like to respond? First of all, I still love Kurt. I know the last few years have not been the best. Why? She asked. I lost all interest in sex, I didn't need it, and I didn't want it, Sue replied. I take it was physiological, you were going through menopause? Yes, I just didn't have any desire. Did you speak to your doctor? Did she prescribe HRT for you? I didn't want to take any medication, Sue replied. Why? I don't like putting chemicals into my body. So you discussed this with Kurt? She asked. Yes, he just didn't want to understand my point of view. He only wanted one thing. Kurt, did she tell you about her concerns? Yes, and I told her that there were other ways to handle it other than just saying no. Like what? She asked. I would do my best. I tried, but she blew me off. So I guess the fighting started around this time? Yeah, she didn't even try, I stated. And how did that make you feel? She asked. That she didn't love me or want me anymore, or if she did, she didn't want to do anything about how I was feeling and how it was affecting our relationship. Sue, you stated that you loved Kurt, so why were you unwilling to fulfill his wants and needs? I wasn't interested, and his attempts to coax, pester, and even beg made me feel resentful of him. Why couldn't he just realize that it was no longer a part of our relationship? Sue, physical intimacy is a normal part of marriage and a way for two people to show their love for each other, she said. It's not love. Love is more than that, Sue replied. Yes, love is more than that, but intimacy is part of a relationship, she said. Kurt, tell me what you were doing and what was going through your head during all of this. She said, well, after a few months of no intimacy, I decided that I would stop trying to initiate and wait for her to take the initiative on her own. I thought that maybe on special occasions she would get sentimental and it would happen. I thought that at Thanksgiving, when we live as a family, she would want intimacy, but it didn't happen. Then Christmas, maybe I'll get a gift from her for Christmas, but it didn't happen. Then New Year's Eve, let's start over, but that didn't happen. Valentine's Day, the most romantic day of the year. We went out to dinner together, but again, nothing happened. Then my birthday, nothing. Her birthday, nothing. And finally our anniversary, we went out again, had dinner, danced, but nothing happened. From that point on, I just shut down. When we talked, it was unemotional and businesslike. Conversations boiled down to what we needed to get done around the house or doctor's appointments, or even whether we were going to a friend's house this weekend. We became more like roommates. Sue, what do you have to say about that? She asked. Sue. I didn't know what to say. I was ashamed of what Kurt had told her. He made me look like a cold and uncaring bitch. I couldn't believe that he looked at every event as a possible chance to get his way. Was that really all he was thinking about? I didn't know that, I just thought he was over it. It wasn't that important to me, so why should it be important to him? I began to realize what was going on in his head. He thought that by rejecting him, he was physically rejecting him and his love. I, on the other hand, thought otherwise. That doesn't mean I've stopped loving you, I said, looking at him. Bullshit, Sue, Kurt said. You haven't expressed your love to me in years. You've even given another man what you haven't given me. How is that any indication that you still love me? I don't think you hated me, but I think you didn't care for me. So now the feeling is mutual. I don't care what you do, and I will find someone who makes me happy and who I can make happy. She will show me every day how happy she is, and we will enjoy physical intimacy with each other. Even when we don't really want it, we will do it for each other unselfishly, so that we each get what we need. That is the kind of woman I will be looking for when the divorce is finalized. I want to move on with my life to find a woman like that. With those words, Kurt rose from his chair and walked out of the office. After that, the counselor and I talked for a while longer, but I wasn't interested. The realization was growing in my mind that Kurt didn't need me anymore. He wanted to find someone else to be happy with because he wasn't happy with me. I had hurt him deeply. In fact, I kind of emasculated him. I wasn't having fun with him, but I was having fun with another male, a younger male. In the animal world, the younger male superseded the older male. They didn't fight over me, and he didn't lose. He was just replaced. I came home and sat in the empty house, just me and my thoughts. I didn't feel like cooking dinner, so I just ordered food from Domino's. As I sat there waiting, I relived the last few years all over again. I understood everything now. Kurt had tried to show me his love, but I had rejected him. It wasn't just that, it was about intimacy, physical and emotional. The doorbell rang and I went to the door. The driver opened, an older man, not much older than me, and he seemed familiar. Sue Randolph? He asked. Yes. I thought that was you. Thank you so much. What? I asked. Because you screwed up, we all screwed up, and I'm working this shitty job to try and make up the difference. I hope you like your pizza, he said with a weird look on his face. Closing the door, I looked at the pizza box in my hands. Had he really done something to my pizza? I didn't know, but I threw it in the trash anyway. In the weeks since my hours had been cut, I had become the object of hateful stares and barely audible comments from coworkers. Being there was becoming unpleasant, but it was my fault. I deserved it. Kurt? Well, this meeting didn't go as I expected. At least I was able to get my point across. Perhaps this will lead to a protracted series of counseling sessions. Well, at least I got some satisfaction. I went to the apartment and sat there all alone. I would be alone until the divorce was final. And then I would promise myself that I would do what I promised and find someone who would make me happy and who I could make happy in return. As I sat there feeling sorry for myself, the phone rang. It was probably Sue calling to yell at me for what happened in counseling. I looked at the display, it was Glenn, and smiled at the unexpected call. Hey Glenn, how's it going? Hi Dad, he replied in an impassive voice. What's wrong? I asked. We're over, Dad. Janie and I broke up. No, that can't be. You love her so much. We've been fighting since Thanksgiving. She thinks I'm stupid for expecting her to promise not to do something she has no intention of doing, but I don't. I can't go into marriage with those doubts in the back of my mind. Damn, Sue. I thought, you've ruined not only our marriage but also our son's potential marriage. I'm sorry, son. I know you love her. It won't be long before you meet someone you can be devoted to, who will also be devoted to you, body, soul, and heart. Thanks, Dad. I hope you find someone like that, too. Sue? I was sitting watching TV when the phone rang. I wondered if I should send it to voicemail, but I got curious and looked at the display. It was Julia. Hi, Julia. Thanks for calling. How are you? Good, Mom. How are you? I've had better days, I replied solemnly. Then I don't want to tell you about it. I don't want to make your day worse. What is it, Julia? Come on, tell me. Glenn broke up with Janie. What? Why? She called me the other day and told me. He's fixated on cheating. He thinks she's going to cheat on him. Oh no, I thought to myself. What have I done? He even wanted her to promise that they would each sign a prenup in which everything but the cheater's clothes would be given to the other party. Oh my God, I said quietly. Then I thought, he's his father's son. If Kurt and I had just started out in our day, he would have done exactly the same thing. It was hardly heard of in those days. I guess I can be thankful for that. They had a fight, and he broke up with her. She called me in tears, asking why he was so stubborn. I didn't know what to say back. Maybe he'll cool down and they can patch things up? I said hopefully, but really I knew my son. He wouldn't change his mind about this. I give up, I said to myself, and the next day, I called my lawyer. I told him to ask for a 50-50th split, not 70-30ths, as he had requested, and to change the reason to irreconcilable differences. If Kurt agreed, I would sign the papers right away. I knew that fighting would only delay the inevitable. I hoped he would consider it a good compromise. Kurt, I got a call from my lawyer. We had gotten a proposal from Sue's attorney. She offered to stop counseling and sign the divorce papers if we changed the split to 50-50ths and the cause to irreconcilable differences. I told the attorney, there's no way I'm taking that offer. She won't be able to cover up her cheating by changing the cause. Remind her attorney that we have a picture and the words of the court representative that she was at the boarding house with a man other than her husband on the bed. I will agree to a 50-50th split if she agrees otherwise. He said he would talk to her lawyer and see what they could agree on. Sue. Kurt declined my offer. His lawyer reminded me that they had a witness who had seen David naked on the bed. How could I have forgotten that? However, he agreed to a 50-50th split. I told my attorney to take him up on that offer. I had pretty much decided that I wasn't going to stay in this town when it was over. St. Paul was nice when we lived there. Maybe I'll go back there, or maybe I'll leave for warmer climes. Either way, I won't have to deal with people in this town shunning me anymore. I thought back over the past year and thought about how things had changed. The next day, a new salesman from Heartland Paper came to work to try to get our business back. I asked him where David was. In the hospital for at least another day or two, he replied. Why? I asked, not trying to sound too concerned. He was pretty beat up. Looks like he was hit with a baseball bat. I was transferred to the area, and he'll be transferred to South Central Dakota when he recovers enough to get back to work. Do they know who beat him up? No, he said 2 guys attacked him from behind. He didn't get a good look at them. I wondered if Kurt was involved. Maybe it was one of the husbands, since Kurt had let them know. I should have called David and checked on him, but that might give the wrong signal that I was done with him. Kurt? She had accepted the offer. Now all we had to do was wait for our time in front of the judge. Since we had both agreed on everything beforehand, it had to go quickly. I think about the years we spent together, and I'm still angry at what she did to us. Our whole family would be different now. I wonder if I will ever be able to have a heart-to-heart talk with her again. Sue. The house was so empty that I was looking forward to selling it and splitting the proceeds. An empty house made me think too much. I turned on the TV and watched some mindless programs, but my thoughts still wandered. When I accepted David's invitation to dinner, I asked myself, what's wrong with that? I think I know now. Somewhere in America, a middle-aged married woman is right now accepting a dinner invitation with a man who is not her husband. She asks herself, what's wrong with that? If only she knew. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Subscribe to my channel and watch for the next video.